Hi, I'm Alison Klayman. I'm a filmmaker and a journalist. I'm here sharing my debut documentary film. I'm really energized by the incredible reception that my work has had, and also the thrill that I've had of bringing a story that I think is important and kind of both about the subject matter, but also its power to inspire viewers, and bringing that around, that I am just completely energized by the idea of continuing on to do work as a filmmaker. Well, I think because my experience so far as a filmmaker has been in documentary film, and with my first film, Ai Weiwei, Never Sorry, because I was doing a film about an artist and documentary filmmaker himself, I got to learn a little bit from my subject as well. And there was something that he told me that I think will stick with me forever in all the future, both films, but especially I think documentary work. And it's that, if you, it was somebody with, it was one of his own videographer kind of crew who encountered the police, and Weiwei said, "Well, did you get the shot?" And he said, "No, I was worried that they were going to take the camera away, so I didn't turn it on. I didn't take it out." And Weiwei said, "Well, then it's like they already took the camera from you." And I think that it's a very simple lesson, but for me, it continues to resonate. And I think just the idea that there's all kinds of reasons not to turn on your camera and not to document or not to tell a story. But that first choice, it's all up to you. The first choice between, your brain and your hands to turn it on is probably the most important choice that you have. There is a lot of risk involved. I never really saw it. I always saw the greatest risk by far as being, on the part of the Chinese citizens that were engaging in the work that I was documenting, including Ai Weiwei, up to and including Ai Weiwei. That's not to say that there wasn't any risk to me as well, but I think that my priorities were sort of like, first was do no harm and make sure that, my presence never makes anybody's situation kind of worse. I think then the next level was like, get the shot and get your tape. I think I almost saw it, that the biggest risk was, that I would run into interference with my work, or that, something I shot could be confiscated. But, for personal safety, I wouldn't even say, I think those were the first two concerns kind of before that. The most scared that I was during the entire process, though, I was actually in New York at the time, which was when Weiwei was detained in April of 2011. It was just such an unprecedented, extreme blow to him and to his way of life, and there was so much uncertainty surrounding it that, it kind of didn't matter about the proximity to being, in China. It was just the scariest time for sure, and it was also, one of the most challenging, aspects of putting the film together was to have that happen when I was already in the edit and I was already sort of trying to figure out, getting ready to bring the film out into the world or to be a more public figure, and to have that happen, it was all kind of thrust into the public sphere maybe a little earlier than I had anticipated. What's really interesting is I think one of the shots that I was the most nervous about having in the film, it's a scene where Weiwei takes off the glasses of one of the plainclothes officers that he's sort of encountering. And it's actually some of the footage, that scene, I had two camera angles on that because Weiwei's own videographer had shot. So I think that was one of his shots. And I did have it. We had exchanged footage from that day, but I was really nervous about having it in the film because I felt, hey, in the U.S. that would be an assault, to come up to a police officer and, take off his sunglasses. And so at first I tried to cut without it. And then I thought, that's the essence. It's so vital to this scene. So my editor and I decided we're going to put it in. But of course, Weiwei is going to review the finished product or the almost finished product, and he can tell us if there's a problem. But this is what exemplifies the unique situation that I'm in with having Ai Weiwei as a subject. First of all, not only did he not ask for that to be taken out. But actually, he put up his own video that includes footage from that day and includes that shot on YouTube. So I had, in some ways I felt, obviously my responsibility, I think, is to be overcautious. I have other people's lives sort of that, in my hands, or that I'm telling other people's stories. But for his part, he is an incredibly sort of gutsy individual who also likes to employ these tactics of transparency and documentation and sort of publicizing things and spreading them online. And so, the things that I was most nervous about, he makes that bold move on his own to kind of put it out there. So other than that, there's lots of stuff that I love that, didn't make it into the film, but I can't think of really anything that I was like, I have this and it's so inflammatory that it's a problem. And again, because so much of what's in the film, the truth is in the public record, kind of one way or another, whether he tweeted about it or he put up a clip of it or a photo of it. What I think the film's contribution is putting it all in a timeline, and putting it all into a well-told story, and a digestible and compelling and entertaining story, because not everyone sits around all day and obsesses with everything Ai Weiwei does and follows it. You need the filmmaker to do that and then kind of give it to you. I think through this I definitely discovered a passion to continue, doing this work as a filmmaker. I think I'm also after doing this, I'm completely amazed that any film ever gets made, ever. It's so much work. There's so many factors in the balance. And I guess from afar, I always thought of it as, the difference between someone who has written a book or made a movie and someone who wants to is just that the person did it, right? And I guess to me, the whole endeavor was a question like, can you do it? Can you see it all the way through? And I think that's the biggest thing you learn, is, your ability to kind of put it out there, to be dedicated, and to kind of follow your gut, I guess, to make the right calls. Because in the end, there are a million different ways you could make this movie, and in this case, it has such a compelling subject, but I know there are a million and one ways to make a movie about Ai Weiwei. And I guess the thing I'm proudest about is that I made the movie that I wanted to make. And then it's just a bonus that everybody has appreciated it and that it has a place in sort of contemporary sort of, what's like in the zeitgeist. I mean, I think it's really relevant. But yeah, I think the biggest thing you learned is that, okay, I'm one of those people who finishes it. That's just empowering to do the next one. What I think is great about Ai Weiwei Never Sorry is the component. It's not part of the film, but the fact that that it was made by me is this other part of the story that isn't kind of told in the narrative. But what I love about it is that I think it can really be an accessible example for people who want to go out and do film, and especially documentary, and especially something that might be more socially relevant anywhere in the world. I mean, I think I'm a good example of just kind of doing it, and I did not have any credentials going into it. I think that I had, a passion and strong desire. I had a vision for what I wanted the movie to be, sort of the best, critical look at Ai Weiwei, the in-depth sort of, a character portrait, like something that followed the story as it happened, that I didn't know what was going to happen as it was going along. I had a lot of ideas. I had a lot of, kind of ideas about the approach, but I had no calling card. I had nothing to say. This shows that I can make a movie, and now I can do it. And I really think, following your gut, being really responsible, and telling the story the way you want to do it. These days, there's just very little barrier to entry, with the easy access of sort of digital filmmaking tools, and we can all, the possibilities of traveling around the world. I mean, there's so much. I think the main thing I would say, though, is to always be responsible in how you behave and being aware of like what your role is, and coming into it with a lot of sort of like a very conscientious approach. But then otherwise, it's like the sky's the limit. And I think it's really a period for documentary film, and independent just film in general, really to sort of blossom and proliferate. And so just make sure you know what you want to say, and that's all you need. One of my earliest memories of being like really just powerfully struck by a documentary was actually Capturing the Freedmans. To have a film that I thought very purposefully, and because of the depth of sort of the investigation and the storytelling and the way it covered all aspects, really left you not knowing what to think. I thought was just so powerful. It wasn't like because something was left out or not done well enough. It was because it was covered so well. The fact that reality isn't clear-cut, and the fact that you can both be satisfied and totally bewildered by a film and by a documentary. I think those are the kind of movies that really stick with me, and that, you know, I would hope to make contributions to cinema in that way. It's a vehicle, it's an excuse, maybe even to have an adventure that you want to have, or to find something out that you didn't know, to meet someone you wanted to meet, to explore, you know, a subject that you think hasn't been explored yet. And that's why I think it is something that is really open, again, with sort of careful thought, but I think it's something that's really open to anybody who has that kind of inclination. And, you know, I think, you know, part of my story isn't just about deciding to do a film, but it was also about deciding to move to China. It's a place I'd never been, and actually I hadn't studied or didn't speak the language. But, you know, I'm a really big advocate also of kind of taking those risks and, you know, go somewhere new and kind of learn a new skill and try something new. So I hope that that's the sort of extra message, besides everything that's kind of relevant to the film, that I get to talk about when I go around with the film. But I think that's another part of the story that I tell about my experience making the film. Our first screening at Sundance, you know, coming up to the room right when the movie ended, and it was the first time I watched it with such a big audience in its final form, and I don't think I like moved the entire time, but I felt every like time someone scratched like their ear, you know. It was like a really intense experience. And when it finished, and of course it was a friendly room because it was the premiere screening, but, you know, the audience rose to its feet to applaud as I went to the front of the room. And I swear in that moment, I was like, I want theatrical. It was like probably the dominant thought in my head was like, you know, don't look nervous, and I want theatrical. And, you know, we were really fortunate that it was a possibility for us. And, you know, putting the film out with IFC Films has been a really great experience. It's not the be-all, end-all, but I think when you do have the opportunity, it's definitely something to grab onto, and it can really kind of elevate the rest of the life of a project because it had that kind of exposure. So, you know, at this point, yeah, I love the experience of seeing the film on the big screen and seeing an audience come in, and the fuller the theater, the better. So I think it's really important, and I think it's something that now, after Weiwei has seen the whole life so far of this film, he's just blown away at what a phenomenon it's been. And I think a large part of it is because it's getting this theatrical release also in Germany and UK and Scandinavia and a lot more countries coming this fall. So this is before showing the film here, but I've had a couple sessions already today in talking with film or media students, and also even in talking to, you know, scholars in the sort of international or human rights realm. It seems like a lot of them also think about art and cinema and documentary, and I feel like it has to be partly because there's this hub here of the IU cinema, and the fact that you have such great programming and you have such great visitors, and it just feels like it's something that's on people's minds, even in a interdisciplinary sense, that people understand that there might be sort of a film component or a media kind of component to the work they do, and it might be they might inform film and film might inform it. So I think that to have this kind of space just makes it must be that it makes it an anchor, because you can feel it. Like, I actually asked someone, one of the students who was walking me around, I was like, is it just because I'm meeting certain people that I think that film is such a vital part of this campus, or is it actually because it just feels like it's such a big part, and and there's so much pride in this theater too, so I think it's all connected.